Hello and welcome back to Level Zero Literacy. My name is Mason, and this week I am enthusiastic to bring you our corporate-approved episode on The Outer Worlds. Now, during this episode, we are going to spoil the events of this game from beginning to end. We're also going to discuss some topics that include, but are not limited to, capitalism, bodily harm, and worst of all, adult cartoons. Please use your best judgment before proceeding, and enjoy. Hey, thank you, introduction, Mason. This is Level Zero Literacy. My name is Mason. I am so excited to bring you our episode on The Outer Worlds. I am here with my co-hosts, Buck.
If God put me on this world to do anything, it is criticize anti-capitalist shitposts.
Hell yeah, brother. And Sam.
Sam Units, my beloved.
Okay. And joining us is my beautiful and wonderful wife, Haley.
Hello. It's not the best choice. It's Spacer's choice.
Hell yeah. Like I said, we are here to talk about Outer Worlds. The Outer Worlds is a 2019 Fallout-inspired RPG by Obsidian, directed by Leonard Boyarsky and Tim Kaine, and written by Leonard Boyarsky.
Very Fallout inspired then.
Very.
I didn't know Leonard worked on this too.
Oh yeah. It draws inspiration from sci-fi comedies such as Futurama and Firefly, as well as has its comedic roots in shows like Rick and Morty. It has been called the spiritual successor to Fallout, and Tim Kaine and Boyarsky both heavily believe in this project. We're here to talk about it. Themes include capitalism, communism, the role of corporations in the future, survival in harsh environments, and a lighthearted romp through space. Am I missing anything big?
Automation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, automation. Automation is a big thing.
Yeah, automation as it relates to the workplace and what it means for our future. All right. I feel like we are we're about to open up a can of Saltuna and really let loose some of our feelings on this game. We have all spoken at length, all four of us, with each other and as a group about the things about this game that we feel were really exceptional and the many ways that we feel it was simply mediocre and fails to sort of take the reins from where Fallout was culturally 30 years ago. I am very interested to hear everyone's opinions on this game and the story today. I think the best way to structure this will be to take it planet by planet. This game is heavily choice-based. It is advertised as such. It is very mechanically a choice-based RPG system. And so each planet, as it exists as a small story arc in the larger narrative of the game, is going to be vitally and important to sort of understanding the next thing that happens, right? The game opens with the colony ship, the Hope, floating through space, lost. Lots of things that exist in the game, such as audio logs, newspapers, and other writings, explain that the Hope ship, which contains cryogenically frozen space colonists, has been lost. However, one of the first thing we see is mad scientist Phineas Wells land and unfreeze you, the main character, from cryogenic sleep. Phineas needs your help to unfreeze the rest of the colonists and save the dying Halcyon colony. You land on Terra 2, one of the main planets one of the largest and most industrialized planets in the solar system that the game takes place in, outside of a small town called Edgewater, a fishing community. Well, folks,
The first thing I thought about Phineas Wells is that guy is definitely going to betray me at some point. I don't know what it was about his character, but I was immediately like, I do not trust this man.
The first thing I thought of when I saw Phineas was that he was going to turn himself into a pickle, and that shit was going to be hilarious.
I'm so blessed to have never watched a single episode of Rick and Morty.
I haven't either, and I think that probably detracts from, like, there's definitely, like, direct influence, right? What year did Rick and Morty come out? Like 2014, 2013?
I mean, maybe a little bit.
While.
I found Phineas way more bearable than any of the clips I've ever seen from that show.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Phineas, like, He looks a little like
Yeah, he
Rick,
does.
but like personality wise is nothing like him.
Well, he's like a mad scientist, and he's
Yeah.
like kind of goofy, and he's always heavily armed, and
He's like if Rick didn't dull out his senses with alcohol all the time.
Yeah, I haven't
It was
seen
just like a regular person.
I haven't seen the show, but vibes based, he's like Rick if Rick had some morals, right?
maybe.
Yeah.
Rick has morals. He's just like I don't want to get too deep into this.
Yeah.
It's like a different episode. Rick has morals, but his morals cause him to be an alcoholic. Essentially, is kind of like I think the one sentence way I can explain it.
Sure. Well, you land in Edgewater. You destroy the ship captain, literally smush him, Alex Hawthorne, who is meant to be your point of contact. And as such, you find yourself to be the proud owner of a spaceship. Now, you don't have a battery to power your spaceship. You do need to go get one. And luckily, there's a nice big settlement nearby, a fishing village named Edgewater. Inside, you meet a bunch of people who seem completely out of their mind. Everyone talks about things like having to rent their own gravestone, how committing suicide is destruction of company property, how they're working 16-hour shifts hopped up on drugs, and how there's a mysterious plague killing everyone. That's actually just influenza.
Yeah.
Edgewater is, in my opinion, a perfect microcosm of what this game is, what it does well, and where it falls short. I really want to dig in just sort of the role of Reed Thompson, what impressions you all got from how the game sort of presented Edgewater, and then also the role of like the botanical gardens, the separatists.
Thompson to me was he comes on very strong when you meet him for the first time, and I think it would not have taken much adjustment to his character to get him to be more sympathetic and like more likely to get on his side, right?
Yeah.
Because he uses a lot of language that is not inherently like violent. Like, he talks about his people as a family, which is like obvious, like normal corporate propaganda stuff. But, he is like cordial to you as a person. He is, he presents himself in such a way that he's not trying to come off as a threat or whatever. I think it would not have taken much of a push in a slightly different direction to get that sort of clear concept of him being like a reasonable choice for this conundrum.
I agree with that. As you were saying it, I was kind of reaching that conclusion as well, where like I did not find Reed sympathetic enough in the decisions that he made. And I don't know how deep into details we want to go here, but like a big part of this game is you have to like go into everyone's stuff to actually like figure out what's going on.
Right.
Like, because you're told vaguely some things are happening, medicine's getting rationed. Where are these marauders coming from? Like, you get bits and pieces, but unless you dig into it, you don't really know exactly why these things are happening. And Reed was, like, on the borderline for me. Like, I was kind of hemming and hawing for a little bit at some points, but then there were other things that I figured out about Reed, and specifically the way Spacer's Choice runs things, where I'm like, I just can't. I can't side with Spacer's Choice in this situation.
Yeah.
And like, we're going to get there. It's also how I ended up with the board as well. But like, we'll come back to that. But like, there's so many times where something could have been slightly different and I might have had more sympathy for how the corporations were doing things. And then that just simply didn't happen. There's no point where Reed goes from being like a clear corporate lackey who's just trying to optimize corporate things to being like a more normal human being.
I think it would have even been cool if like there was a point where he he kind of broke the facade and was just like, look, man, I got to level with you. The board is on my ass, and I have to get these deserters back into Edgewater, or something like truly bad is going to happen. I think there is a part of Thompson that does genuinely want the best for his people. It's just that he's been so corporate pilled that he can't get past that barrier. So I don't know. I think there are ways. I like him because I like it in that I do think that Thompson does a good job kind of setting up your expectations of what the corporate characters are going to be like for the rest of the game, and that includes the group that is not a part of the board.
MSI.
No, the other one, the one that's on the Groundbreaker.
UDL.
Sublight.
Yeah.
Like even Sublight has like still those like corporate, like there's seedy corporate vibes, but like different from the rest of them. So I do think Thompson is at least a good representation of the things that are to come. Whether it's good or bad, is its own thing. But I at least do think they did a good job laying the groundwork for the rest of the game, if nothing else.
Haley?
I agree with a lot of what Sam and Buck have already said. Thompson, just his vibe is, good old-fashioned company man, bowler hat and suit and all. Honestly, with his demeanor and the way he says things, I'm honestly surprised he didn't have like his own mafia in the town. I could totally see.
I mean, he has cops.
Yeah, but I could totally see him as like a mafia man.
Sure.
Like having some kind of like SS or something.
Yeah.
Some kind of like covert assassin force or organized crime. So to contextualize some things that we've said already, because maybe our viewers don't want to take part in this 50-hour slog of a game to kind of keep up with us. The main sort of inciting incident in Edgewater, in the context of the game, is that all of the people in Edgewater is a company town, and all of the people who work there are indentured workers to the Spacer's Choice Corporation.
Which I do want to add, like, out of all the corporations we do learn about in the game, Spacer's Choice is probably the worst of the corporations.
Yeah.
MSI is probably the best.
MSI is technically not on the board,
That's
though.
the one in Monarch, right?
Yeah. They in fact got kicked because they were, well, we'll get to it. So some of the indentured workers break their contract, abandon their work to go live in an abandoned part of the planet where there's a abandoned factory, and they go set up a garden and start having a self-sustaining community that's kind of small and shitty. But the fact that they have broken their contract to go desert the colony is causing problems for everyone. Spacer's Choice, the almighty line has gone down. Since there are fewer workers in the town, they're receiving less food and aid from Spacer's Choice, both because of the reduced number of people and as a punitive sort of response to Reed Thompson, the mayor, not being able to manage properly.
There's also a larger problem that doesn't get revealed till like the last part of the game.
Yeah.
That's why this is, but
yeah. But I mean, just sticking to kind of where we're at right now. And there are, as it turns out, 2 magical ship batteries that live on this planet. One at the re-civilized botanical labs where the Separatists are, and one in Edgewater, which powers the whole town. You have to decide which of these 2 civilizations will continue to exist, which will be scattered to the winds, and take the ship battery from the one that you choose to leave without power. My main sort of my thoughts about this are that I, to sort of echo some of the things that you two said, Sam and Buck, there's a lot of ways they could have gone with this to make the choice hard, to make it seem like there are pros and cons to picking either. As it is presented in game, there is, by my sort of moral framework, essentially no choice. There's simply no reason to ever pick Reed Thompson over Adelaide, who is the leader of the Separatists. You learn later that Adelaide is also, for somewhat understandable reasons, kind of a huge piece of shit. Reed Thompson overworked her sick son to death. But this isn't really revealed until after you've already made the choice. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna let all those corporate people die." And you know, the reveal feels almost like they sort of post hoc added some reasons why you would choose
not to do it. Like, it says a lot about how uncompelling the arguments for picking Edgewater are. Is that the most compelling part that I felt is when Parvati talks to you before you flip the switch.
Yeah,
Yes.
she makes the best case. Why can't Reed do that?
And the thing, but even in that, I didn't like that moment because it was such a tonal whip, like all of a sudden tonal whiplash, which there's a lot of that in this game. But that was like the first time it happened, and I was like, what? She's like, you go through all this big goofy stuff, and Edgewater is big and goofy, and the botanical garden is like less goofy, but still goofy.
The power plant is like high goofy, because you have the schizophrenic dude living in the basement who thinks you're a ghost.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm going to eat rats.
And then you show up at the switch, and Parvati's like, hey, whoa, slow down. You need to really think about what you're doing to the people here. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
And like, I also want to mention the community center's also hyper fucking goofy.
Yeah.
Like, it's a weird zoo thing where they're keeping weird animals, and like it.
They clearly drew the most heavily, in my opinion, on Futurama. And Futurama had this thing where it was a comedy show 90% of the time, and then 10% of the time they would do these things that would like really tug on the heartstrings, like episodes where Fry and Leela saw their life together, or the really infamous one with the dog.
The reason why it works so well in Futurama is because the characters in Futurama are incredibly well done, and there are things that you expect out of them, day in, day out. You never really get a lot of that consistency from the non-party characters in this game.
I think one of the biggest reasons why none of the characters have the chance to breathe is because there's too fucking many.
Yeah, and also
they put way too many NPCs
not a lot
in this
of screen
game.
time. For
no one gets to.
My thing about Edgewater was, and this is getting into the companions a little bit, I wish they took more time to subvert my expectations. I walked into town and it was like, oh yeah, capitalism bad. And that was like kind of a new thing I knew going into this game, which is fine. But upon meeting Vicar Max, it was like an immediate subversion of, oh, also religion is bad. But you didn't get any, I wish that it was like upfront, in your face, capitalism bad, corporations bad, whatever. I wish that the religious thing had been more of a slow burn, because the way the religion works in this game is actually very interesting, but you don't get a lot of time to explore and learn that as a way of why it's bad. It's just kind of, you figure that out right up front from the start, from Vicar Max being kind of a terrible person.
Yeah, it kind of primes you to not take anything about the Church of Law seriously, when it's the first person you meet is like, well, these backwater hicks aren't ready for me to live my life. They're so stupid. They think everything's in a plan for them. Yeah. It's okay, I shouldn't take any of this seriously.
Yeah.
And then later there's parts they want you to take seriously. But it's hold on.
I think that if I were to levy a criticism, my biggest criticism against Edgewater is I feel like they play their hands too quickly, and I really wish they had slow burned some of the things in this game, because I think that would have helped it a lot as far as world building, writing, character development, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, there are some things that they slow burn. But I think the things that they slow burn are
not the right things.
Yeah. Exactly. And another thing about like being in Edgewater and interacting with the people and stuff is like you also start to run into I think the biggest, most awkward part of this game's design is there are a lot of choices you can make in this game that are not only not obvious, you have to go and look them up to understand them. And the one that I'm talking about in Edgewater is you find some medicine in the community center. If you explore Edgewater a bit, you find a sick dude. You cannot just give the medicine to the sick dude. So by the way, there's an entire sick house, and you can talk to this lady in the sick house, and she will just reject you after a while if you don't have the medicine with you. I don't know if it happens differently otherwise. And when I found the medicine in the community center, I couldn't go back and talk to her to resolve the quest in a way that I wanted to resolve it. What I had to do was find the sick guy, then not give the medicine to the sick guy. You have to walk out of the house. And then when you walk out of the house, a lady walks up to you and it's like, hey, you got that medicine? I'm going to use that medicine to get it to the people who actually need it. And like, I had to look this up because I gave the medicine to the sick guy. And I'm like, wait, I don't like this.
Because the old guy is clearly a hypochondriac. Yeah. He's like, or like a drug addict. Yeah. The game makes it somewhat clear that he doesn't actually need the medicine. So how the quest goes, if you find the sick guy first, right? Because I usually, when I get to a new settlement in the game, I usually go, because all the quests are at the settlement. So if I go comb the settlement pretty thoroughly when I get there, I won't have to worry about collecting quests later. You meet the sick guy. He gives you his whole spiel. Oh, I need the medicine real bad. Need the medicine real bad. And then you walk outside and the lady barks at you. And she's like, hey, come here for a second. And she's standing like right there. So it's pretty obvious. And then she's like, hey, that dude's a hypochondriac. I'll pay you triple. But my interpretation, because I didn't find the sick house till this playthrough, my second playthrough.
Oh.
My interpretation the first time I played the game was like, oh, she's like a corporate. She's just trying to pay 3x as much to go just get the medicine and give it to the workers who have earned it, you know? Because like one of the big things about this plague, which is like a thing that is very brushed over in a lot of ways, you would think that would be a very, very big deal. But like one of the things is like, oh, the company is only giving their limited supply of medicine to not their sickest people or their most, like elderly or young or anything like that, that just by how productive you are as a worker, that is the only measurement that dictates if you get medicine or not. And, they cover it in like a quest or two, and then you can find some background information
logs,
about a guy who got sick, but then it's just kind of like dropped. Why wouldn't the plague be like the main incident here? And then there doesn't have to be like a big choice, because they obviously weren't interested in writing compelling choices in their choice-based RPG.
I think the Plague House, like the Plague House was the thing that made it so easy for me to not pick Edgewater. Yeah. Because I'm like, this is a Plague House right here.
Yeah.
And I know, because I looked up those things, that you're not just giving medicine to people who need it. So, like, fuck you. Like, I understand that picking the lady ends up being bad because she's not going to accept anyone because she's paranoid about company loyalists, but I don't care, because clearly Spacer's Choice is not even close to trying to help these people. Spacer's Choice is just going to slowly kill these people anyway, so why does it matter?
I think it's, well, I don't like when games make me feel bad regardless of what I do.
Yeah.
I want to be able to have something. I want to be able to feel good about something, and that was something I kind of ran up. The writing of this game is supposed to be the thing that makes you feel good, not the decisions. And I think, one last thing I'll harp on about Edgewater is I don't think, whereas I thought Tobson does a really good job of laying the framework of the board and sort of the corporate characters in this game, I think the Edgewater Power Station dungeon does a really bad job of laying the framework of your choices in this game. I was shocked that there was not a way to get power to both communities, even if it was only like at a half level. Because when I first got into the power plant, I started exploring it. I didn't like immediately rush to the the panel or whatever. I was like, oh, there's all these things that haven't been activated properly. Maybe that's why the power station is low on power. So I like went around. It took me some time. Eventually I got all of them. And I went back. It was like, oh no, that was just the thing you were going to have to do anyways.
Yeah.
And so for the rest of the game, I kind of just operate under the assumption that in most instances, there's not like a secret third thing you can do to like make things turn out a little bit better. And that backfired pretty heavily.
I think part of that was like the issue was the power running to both places was not where it technically should have been anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't think there was the way they set it up in the game. I don't think it was going to be realistic to continue both places continue to have power unless you just straight up don't take the thing for your ship, but then you don't have a game.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like you have to, the reason you have to choose one is because you need one of the batteries to put in your ship.
I'm not saying it's I'm not trying to say like it's stupid that they make you decide. I'm saying if you're going to have a secret third thing in a number of your quests later on, you need to set that precedent early so that players understand that that's a thing that they should be looking for. And we're going to get to that when we talk about Monarch.
Yeah, okay. I get that. I'm starting to understand why you had such a bad time with Monarch now that I realize that that's what your frame of mind.
Even if the secret third thing in Edgewater was just like, you can broker the ability for some of the, for some number more of people at Edgewater to be accepted into, maybe you get to be a part of the help with the process of integrating the citizens of Edgewater into the botanical garden community, right? Like something, just a little something to give me a concept of what I should be expecting down the line.
And so I totally understand what you're saying there. The very annoying thing is if they had allowed that, this story would be even more identical to Monarch than it already is.
Do you want to know? So there is a technically neutral option. Do you want to know? So you remember how you were saying earlier you think it's annoying when games make you feel bad no matter what you choose? Okay, so the secret third option, in quotes, is you broker peace between the groups, and that means the botanical garden have to go back to Edgewater, and then the little trophy you get in your ship. You know how you collect trophies when you complete big quests? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you get
interesting.
Decorations in your
ship. Your ship
ne-
starts getting decorated.
Never noticed that.
Well, I mean, you didn't know the respec machine was there.
I didn't.
You didn't explore the ship a lot, I guess.
I never thought there was a reason to.
Fair enough.
There were multiple reasons.
Here's my work. Here's my workbench. This is where I modify and repair things, and here are my companions, so I can talk to them.
So in your bedroom, you get decorations, and the one you get if you choose the broker peace between the groups thing is like a little note that's like, "We will never try to make life better again. It was stupid of us." And it's like, what the hell?
I didn't even know that was an option.
I looked it up, and it was like,
you can do it.
Yeah, you broker peace, and then you get a note from.
I don't see how that is meaningfully different from just shutting off power to.
It's not. It's really not. You just get a sad note from Adelaide like, I'll forget this hurt of my son, and I'll never try and make anything better. Just like, and I know what you're thinking, dear listener. This game was critically lauded. Things will get better. Well, unfortunately, the people responsible for writing Edgewater also wrote the rest of the game. So these are kind of through lines that we might be, I don't know, harping on.
What's interesting about? I didn't realize that this game literally had the same writers as the original Fallout. I feel like this game is a tonal 180 of original Fallout, where original Fallout is a very serious game with some funny undertones to kind of keep you going, and this game is a funny game with some with what tries to be serious undertones
and
to
fails.
Keep things running.
Yeah, I feel that way too.
Is it even possible for a video like obviously we talked about Futurama, and Futurama functions on that axis very well. I don't know if a video game could accomplish that tonal balance.
So Psychonauts does that really well. Fallout New Vegas does it pretty well, which is most of the same people who worked on Fallout 1 and 2. Let's see. Those are like the big ones that come to mind when I think of like video games doing this sort of thing.
The thing about things being possible for video games is anything is possible, right?
Sure.
But it's like you have to. I think the most difficult things about making video games is that, one, you're making an interactive piece of media where you have to program out choices, right? And that's a difficult thing to do. And also, you got to ship a game eventually. And if you're just writing a story that can't change, you're just writing a story that can't change, right? If you're just making a piece of music, you're just making a piece of music. If you're just making a movie, you're just making a movie. And a video game is all of those things put together. And I feel like at some point you just have to pull the trigger of putting that thing out. And I think that amount of time might be shorter than like other things have to like sit in the oven, right?
And
this is all speculation, but
it's also much harder in a video game than almost any other piece of media to make changes midway through. Like movies, you can do reshoots, and that
you
might be difficult.
A new scene.
Yeah, video games, it's like you got to revoice act it all, you have to rescript it all, you have to retexture it all, you have to get 8 different teams working together to like fix the thing you fucked up, and that's millions of dollars because it's all computer animated. So fortunately for the story, next we move to the Groundbreaker, which I believe to be personally one of the high points of the game. Groundbreaker has been on both of my playthroughs a delight because there's no like big crazy story choices. There's no wild back and forth between trying to be serious and trying to be goofy. You just get like pure character work for a little bit. Mind you, there are still some parts where it struggles. The Groundbreaker has the highest NPC density in the game, and it starts to get very difficult to keep things straight.
Especially when this is a game that kind of has same face syndrome.
Yes.
Where because they have like they basically made all the character models based off of what you can make in character creation. And as a result of that, like there's a little bit of like
everyone looks samey. So that's like one rough point of Groundbreaker. But Groundbreaker is all character work, no choices. And funny enough, even though this is a choice-based RPG, and I'm doing air quotes, this is where the game is the best, when they don't make you make their cruddy, badly written choices.
I do somewhat disagree with that because I think brokering peace on Monarch is like my moment. But I'll let you keep going. I did just want to push back a little bit.
I think Byzantium is the high point of this game for me.
I agree with Mason. I think Groundbreaker was one of my favorite areas. There technically is a choice you can make, but it's not like
selling out Phineas.
Well, you can also not fix the Groundbreaker.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I was actually referring to with the guy who was wanted, because you could have like killed him, but instead like
in the back bays, the flamethrower
you
dude.
chose to just be like, hey, they want you dead. Just give me your lighter, because that's what they're asking for is proof of your death.
I wouldn't call that that's not like a choice so much as like a speech check,
Well, because you could have killed him.
You could. So, and just so everyone knows, because this is going to come up a lot, everyone in this game has like a normal name. No, they didn't like name anyone like Bazorkazorp or Quixelon. Everyone is just like Martin, which makes it even harder.
Yeah, the most exotic name in this game is like Junlei.
Yeah.
And that's just because it's
foreign to English speakers. Yeah. So the Groundbreaker is sort of like this neutral zone. It is the single largest quest hub and settlement in the game. It's this giant spaceship that was inherited by a worker far before the board of directors of all these corporations had this control.
It was the first colony ship, right?
Yeah. And it was like, you know, they've done the leader, Junlei Tennyson, has done all this work to keep it independent, and they take their independence very seriously. So like, instead of a Spacer's Choice, you know, sponsored work area, they'll have like a kiosk. Coincidentally, the Spacer's Choice kiosk is where the single greatest character in the game is. Martin, my beloved, the Moon Man. But yeah, like the reasons I love the Groundbreaker are because you get to experience all of all of Parvati's like companion quest, which I think is really, really good. You get all of these like intertwining and like antagonistic relationships between these people who have to coexist in this very tiny space, like Lilia Hagen of Sublight and not Udom. Yeah, Udom Bedford.
Who is a board representative.
Yeah, the board representative. And then you have like the black market granny. Is it Agnes?
Gladys Cole Kelly.
Gladys Cole Kelly is the horny black market grandma. And there's just like all these like really cool characters, and it's like you know, it makes me like pine for a game, and I hope Outer Worlds 2, the confirmed sequel, is more like this, where they're you know, all these characters get to breathe and they have all these cool lines of dialogue, and the quests are like really fun and make like logical sense, and you don't feel stupid for doing them, which is something this game does. It makes you feel dumb for doing side quests. Oh man, the Groundbreaker is so good in my opinion, and Junlei is like the coolest mayor type figure in the game.
Well, I think it's because she's not like she's not associated with a corp, and she also isn't like explicitly a rebel actively fighting a corp.
She's just trying to, I mean, she is a leader just trying to like keep things together and like keep things running. So her cause is more relatable because she is just a person trying to exist and just trying to do her best, rather than like, oh, got to make a bunch of money for the board, or oh, I have to make my small religious pseudo sect a big deal and make us respected. It's like, she's like, no, I'm just trying to like keep the board out and just make sure everyone's cared for and like do a balancing act. So she's like more like a normal person than anyone else in this game that's not in your party.
She's the only one you work for that you don't feel like bad for working for, and she's not like just like presented to be grossly incompetent. So she's just like this person who has way too much on her plate, but she's like the only person for the job, and you help her in ways that are like positive, and they don't have these like weird things that backfire or go, you know, wildly off the rails. It's just like, oh yeah, you feel good for helping out this person who's in legitimate need, who you know, can't keep all these plates spinning, but is doing like potentially some of the best and coolest stuff in the game. It feels good. It feels good to help Junlei out. Any closing thoughts on Groundbreaker?
I'll talk later about. I want to wait a little bit to talk about Lilia, because her stuff is kind of tied into some things later in the game.
I have a request.
Yeah.
Can we not talk about anything that happens on Roseway?
Yeah.
I don't even remember anything about Roseway.
Thank
I'm going to
God.
be completely honest with you.
Roseway is easily the low point of the game for me.
The fucking toothpaste man.
Yeah, it was just forgettable.
Yeah, it's so forgettable. It's, you know, you're helping out Auntie Cleo, who like both Auntie Cleo and UDL are like the factions here, and they're both clearly the worst corps. Like,
can I be honest? I literally just gave all the inventions back to all the guys without even like realizing that's what I was supposed to take back to Gladys.
Yeah. By this point, I had figured out that I need to read the quest log, because the quest log like tells you what you can do with stuff. So fortunately, the only thing I did was I returned the weapon schematics, because that gets you a unique weapon. It's not good, but it gives you a unique weapon.
It's the best laser pistol. That's too gamey, but yeah. I will talk about one thing there later when I am illustrating examples of a thing I don't like. But we don't have to go over the whole big thing. After you are done on Roseway, the worst part of the game, you get the pleasure of going to Monarch, which is probably the best part of the game as far as individual levels go in a game design sense.
I really enjoy Monarch.
Monarch is cool.
It's definitely the one they developed the most.
Oh, yeah.
It is, and stop me if you've heard this one before, listeners, a clash of separatist anti-corporation faction who are barely struggling to get by versus a corporation that is trying to curry the favor of the board.
You know, I think if the entire game had just been set on Monarch, it would have been or like even if like 80% of the opening of the game had just been Monarch, I think this would have been a better game.
I think so too.
They wouldn't retread any grounds. There's bigger stakes for all of the people that are on this planet than pretty much any of the other conflicts you find yourself getting involved in that aren't like the Hope and Phineas.
And like, how much better as a sympathetic Corpo character is Sanjar than
Yeah, Sanjar's way cooler.
like
Love Sanjar so much. Like the way they wrote his dialogue of, just his different like mannerisms. I loved him so much. And Sanjar also is, MSI is just a very different company than a lot of the other corporations we come across. So if you don't mind, Mason, I'll give a little bit of background into Monarch. So Monarch was originally Terra 1. Terra 1 ultimately was deemed a failure because of the living conditions of the planet. Like, it was harsh living conditions, really dangerous
there's
wildlife.
some kind of monster living in the core of the planet.
Right, yeah. Which, to be fair, there's like dangerous wildlife like everywhere, but it's like especially bad on Monarch. So the board pulled out of Terra 1, and MSI like was not on board with that. They also just can't remember exactly what, but there was a couple other disagreements as well, and the board essentially booted them off of the board. So Monarch is technically independent from the board as well. Sanjar is trying to get MSI back onto the board to improve the living conditions of his town, Stellar Bay. But Sanjar is characterized very different from like Spacer's Choice and Auntie Cleo and all of them, because he really cares about his townspeople, not as a company, but as people, as a community. He doesn't, he expects them to work, of course, but it's not like he's forcing people to like work double shifts. They're not indentured servants. He's paying them pretty well. Like you learn, I think it's his assistant Celia. She makes a complaint at some point about like not having money after spending on this thing. And you even ask her, they're like, is Sanjar like not paying you well? And she's like, oh no, my paycheck's pretty good. I'm just spending all of my money on these monster parts to talk to this guy that I think is cute.
Sanjar and Celia are like people I felt like I could go back and interact with multiple times, and I wouldn't find their characters incredibly grating at some point.
Yeah.
They felt more down to earth than, and there was still like a comedic edge to their characters.
Sanjar got a bad corporate review, and you can just hold it over his head.
Yeah. Like your interactions with them are very funny, but part of the reasons why the comedy works more for me with those characters is because they just feel like actual people who have quirky, weird things about them, rather than being quirky, weird people with some aspect of normal things about them.
Yeah. There's also the tension between the iconoclasts and MSI is really cool. And the fact that there's this like third settlement where Sublight just like popped up, and like they're the only thing that's like keeping both of these other places alive is like the trade from and like the importing from Sublight is an interesting dynamic.
And there's an information broker, and there's a meat factory that's not aligned with anyone really.
I didn't do the meat factory. Did either of you do the
I
meat
did.
factory?
I did.
There's many different ways to complete the meat factory.
Yeah. I think I ended up killing the guy that runs it.
I hacked their computer to make I cooked their books so they were like not worth a lot, and then they got bought out.
But your first playthrough you ever did years ago, you
I
killed off
poisoned all the
assistant
pigs.
Yeah.
I poisoned
So
poisoned
there's
all
at
the
least
pigs.
3 different ways to do that one.
Yeah, I snuck in and I killed like just the owner of the cyst pig factory.
This
I think that still ends up with them being like acquired by.
The Monarch gets the closest. I don't think they thread the needle perfectly. They get the closest throughout the game of getting the tone like just right, where Sanjar like sends you on this quest into this dangerous part of town, and he's like, I need the Bolt 52, the most powerful munition on the planet. And it's just like a big long form.
Yeah.
A form so long that a lady had a seizure trying to complete one part of it. He's like, I'm just the man for the job. It's just like a complaint form that will get them back on the board. Like that's funny. That's like a good like twist ending to like a quest where that's like serious most of the way.
And like when you go to get it, you find Huxley locked in the
Yeah.
and so she's like your introduction to the Iconoclasts effectively, if you haven't gone to their settlement yet.
I think the MSI stuff works 50 times better than the Iconoclast.
I also
stuff.
like the subquest where you figure out that the lady running the warehouse has been skimming off the top for a while, and you find that out, and then you negotiate with her employees to get her to pay them more.
I thought it was weird. I didn't understand their motivation of like not being willing to blackmail her about that.
Because they like her.
Yeah, it was just like
I didn't know they were unwilling to do that.
Yeah,
I just went and did it.
You like come back. You can like go back to them and be like, "Hey, I got this information." They're like, "No, we don't want to. We don't want to be any part with."
Yeah, I think
part
it's
of
because
that."
they like her. Probably.
Yeah,
right?
there's like an understanding that they are friends with her. They like their manager, but she's still like a manager, and they're like a union. The thing I don't like about that quest specifically is, like the meme that people have about these types of games where it'll be like, dialogue choice 1, choose to do one thing. Dialogue choice 2, choose to do second thing. Speech check, bypass all this and immediately complete the quest. This is exactly what happens in this quest. You go up to talk to the union guys for the first time, and it's like, persuade or like lie 50, she's gonna lose her job if you don't go back, and they're like, oh, okay, well, if you say so.
Well, I mean, yeah, but like you have to get to lie 50. That is a huge investment.
It is,
in my opinion.
It is,
and like, I don't know. I understand that. It's just I didn't use it.
Sure.
Mason lied a lot in this game.
I do. Oh, can we talk a little bit about the characters we played?
Yeah.
Because my character did actually influence my playthrough quite a bit. My character's name was John Himbo. And he was I took his intellect down to as low as it could take it, and I made him
unlocked the special dialogue.
I made him really strong, and I made him very like charismatic. So like he had good speech skills and he had good leadership skills.
But he was stupid.
And so when you lower the intellect of your character, you actually unlock a entirely new set of dialogue options called dumb. And you can just be really fucking stupid all the time.
It's very funny.
So like when you do that scene where the lady is locked behind the door, you can be like, or like the first time someone talks to you over like the transistor, you can be like, oh my God, a ghost is talking to me.
Did you know
like sometimes when you like say things to characters, they're like, oh, I have to spell this out very simply. Bad things will happen if you don't fix the fucky.
Yeah.
Like not that, but like shit like that will happen all the time.
My character was named Gunch Brunchley. And he was not very charismatic, but he was very smart and pretty strong.
My character was max charisma. I literally prioritized persuasion and secondarily prioritized lying over everything else.
Lying is just like the best skill in this game. It's ridiculous
there.
how utilitous lying is.
I like how lying, persuasion, and intimidate all have like different uses in this game. I think it's a very interesting way of incorporating persuasion style stuff.
It's also nice that there are sometimes checks that require you to be multi-talented. Like at the very end of the game, there's a choice that's like dumb, two-handed, intimidation. And you have to have all of those things to be able to pick this specific dialogue option.
They really put an impressive amount of complexity. That's one thing I sure can't take away from the game.
Yeah.
Is like mechanically, it is a masterpiece.
Very sound.
It is all in the more artistic and creative parts where it's like, ugh.
I think the only thing I would harp on as far as my gameplay experience was I spec'd into melee combat, and melee combat is very average.
The gunplay is pretty good. I like the gunplay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably should have just respect.
And as I told you off pod, I learned from my Fallout 1 mistake to not spec melee.
Yeah. Well, it's not that bad. Melee wasn't bad. In fact, I felt very powerful. I mean, there are multiple perks you can take that makes melee kind of broken, where it's like one of them is like heal 15% of the damage you deal every time you hit. And it's like, okay.
That's awesome.
So I just got to be like super tanky, where I was like healing 15% off of every hit and also healing 20 or 25% off of any kill. And then after a kill, I immediately crit the next enemy. But like it's basically just run around swinging a big hammer for 20 hours.
Yeah. Let's talk about the iconoclasts.
I hate the iconoclasts.
I like Zora.
Mostly as like a juxtaposition for how good MSI is. I felt like the iconoclasts were not up to the same level.
Y'all know how I was talking about on Citizen Sleeper that I get really frustrated when characters do things that are against their own self-interest?
Yes.
This makes Graham a very frustrating character. This makes Graham like I was like grating my teeth.
So here's the thing. I think Graham is a very realist. So, you know how there's, insane tankies that say, I'm not going to vote because I'm not going to participate. We need to revolt and overthrow America. Graham is that guy. And Graham is exactly that guy and the result of what that guy's ideology is. And in that way, I kind of like Graham as like a real criticism of that kind of guy.
That kind of thinking.
I don't think Graham is entirely unrealistic. I agree with you, Buck. To give a little bit of background on the iconoclasts. So the iconoclasts, they are a little they're pretty different from the deserters from Edgewater in that some of them I think broke away from Stellar Bay when the board pulled out, and others were kind of refugees from Cascadia,
or
which
were
is
recruited from Graham's like religious preaching.
Right.
Yeah.
Cascadia, we'll talk about in a bit, was another company town on Terra 1. They are also different from the Edgewater deserters in that they're essentially a religious cult. They're called, I think, the Philosophists. And you have two main leaders. So you have Graham, who's the leader of the Philosophist movement. He was part of the same corporation as Sanjar. They were actually very good friends until, Graham broke away from Stellar Bay to pursue, trying to pursue enlightenment. And Zora she worked for Rizzo's, which was the company that ran Cascadia. She was, I think, someone pretty high up in that company. And
a high-ranking doctor.
Gotcha.
She was a Sawbones.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm not sure I ever knew that. She is kind of almost the more logistical leader of the Iconoclasts, where she's kind of focused more, not to really the religious stuff like Graham, but focused on, day to day, like everybody getting their basic needs, tending to sick and injured, trying to have kind of a military if needed, because there's kind of this underlying tension that war could break out between Stellar Bay and Amber Heights, which is where the Iconoclasts live.
Yeah, and Zora is like, they heavily hint at, clearly Zora more has the better interests of the survival of the people in mind, as opposed to strictly following ideology. Like, Zora doesn't want to be a corpo, but she also wants to not die.
Right, whereas Graham is so focused on spreading the message of philosophism beyond Amber Heights, like to the rest of the colony. So whereas Zora, because at one point they ask you to spend the little money they have left on certain supplies, Zora asks you to get food and medicine, whereas Graham asks you to get printing supplies for pamphlets.
That's like one of the places where that's like one of the things that I think is very indicative of Graham being a character that's very hard to suspend my disbelief for. And I think I've never iterated this in a way that has had y'all fully understand what I'm talking about, because I felt like y'all push back on this with Citizen Sleeper as well. But like, when you have characters that make decisions that are not in their best interests, there are ways that you can write that. There are ways that characters can do that to earn it. However, there's like one end of the spectrum, which is like, the really devoted scientist who's like not eating because they've been up working for like 3 hours or 3 days straight. And like, that's like, oh, I get why they're doing things that are bad for them. And then on the other end, let's imagine a story where there's like a dude starving to death looking at an apple and just choosing to not eat it, right? You would say that that's dumb, right? But like, the closer we are to that, the harder it is for me to suspend my disbelief and get behind this person as like someone that I think is a person that could exist. Graham is a lot closer to the second example in my mind, because it's like, it is beyond disbelief to me to just think that he wouldn't think that getting all these people killed who are in the hospital and dying and losing their limbs is not going to have bad consequences for his religious movement.
I mean, I understand that, but Graham is also a bad person and insane. Like, I'm not trying to excuse, like, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I'm just also saying Graham is an insane person.
Yes. I just don't think they like earn it super well.
Yeah. I don't think Graham is a well put together character. When I learned that the most interesting part of his character was when I learned that he was the one that got the pirates to show up and ransack the place where he was living. I just didn't. This is one of those things where it's like I felt like a number of the characters in this game were too one-dimensional and like played the same way all the time. And this was really the first time that like a separatist faction in this game fell into that trap. Because the separatists tended to be more multifaceted, but Graham didn't. He was more just like outwardly evil than a lot of the other separatists. A lot of the other separatists are just like evil on the inside. Graham is just like, I'm going to send these people to die to get a printing press, and I'm going to not buy food for my people, and I'm going to summon pirates to raid a village so that people will wake up. So I thought Graham was a believable character in that, a person like that could exist, but I don't think any of the stuff he did was justified in what I saw in the writing in any way, shape, or form. Not even from like he's a crazy person, because like he doesn't come off as a crazy person. He does crazy things, but I'm gonna be This is my biggest fault with this game, and I will 100% take responsibility for lacking in this. I struggle heavily when games have full voice acting, all that stuff, and then it just info dumps you with like 6 pages of text you have to read.
Yeah.
It's like we're all big Monster Hunter fans in this group. In Monster Hunter, it's like, all right, do this cool big action sequence. You fight this big monster. All right, back in the city, here's a 6-page tutorial you have to read to understand how this new mechanic works. I'm like, I'm not reading that. I'll just figure it out as I go. It's the same concept. And that's not a fault of the game. That's not like a fault of the developers. It's just like, I pulled up some of those logs and my eyes glazed over. I was like, I can't bring myself to read this.
Amusingly, your eyes glazing over is kind of the point of Graham's logs, but
it doesn't help, and it didn't help that like a lot of the written logs in this game had the same
information,
and not even the same
joke. Really,
it was like the same like tone. It was like. Oh, the corporations are bad because they did this horrible thing. It's just the horrible thing changed each time.
Yeah,
it's like, corporations are bad because they're housing sick people in one house.
That is almost every log you read.
Yeah,
and it's fun. I get what you're saying, where it's like you can't. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier. You can't prime the player to think that all these logs are superfluous and dumb, and then put like really critical shit in there.
Yeah. So yeah,
and expect them to read it.
Maybe there was stuff more deeper about Graham's personal like. Psychological whatever somewhere, but I probably just didn't ever access that information because apparently there was a lot of things I missed about the stuff I was able to do on Monarch because I simply like didn't look in exactly the right spot.
Listener, it is I, mid-roll ad Mason, here awakening you from cryosleep to provide you with your one mission, which is to Venmo me, Mason Slate, some money. So open up Venmo, look me up, and just sort of send me money. If you can't or don't want to, that's unfortunate. However, you can still help us out by engaging with us on social media, such as by liking, subscribing, rating us 5 stars, or refusing to rate us if you think we are anything below 5 stars. Anyway, I'll shoot you back. Okay, so time to talk about the ending of Monarch.
The worst part of Monarch.
All right, so
But before we do that, can we just real quick, while you're here, you should do the sublight thing where you go and you hijack the gas. Please do that.
Oh yeah,
Do not do that. That should be a required quest, and it's not. And you should
have to
do
hijack the gas.
I didn't even. I guess we all did it, so I don't know what the consequences are for not doing it.
I mean, if you don't do it, you never find out about. Like, there's huge world building shit that you don't learn about human hybridization.
Oh, sure.
And the fact that you can't survive in Halcyon.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the some of the main shit in the game is the sublight.
The sublight boss is the person that sends you to the secret lab on Byzantium. Okay, yeah.
No reason there's literally no reason that's not a main story quest.
I guess it's just
that's where all the Chimera experiments are going on, and
I mean, I guess it's because you don't technically have to do that plot line to get that information at some point in the main story.
Yeah.
But it's just way later.
There are 2 times in this game where they successfully hit the Futurama tug on the heartstring story beat, and that is one of them. Is when you go up on the suspended scientists and they're like, and they write in the logs where they're like, "I'm so sorry, I couldn't save you."
I agree.
There's 2 times they do it. It's that and Nyoka's quest, and like you're reasonably likely to do Nyoka's companion quest because she'll come bother you about it, but you're not as likely to do the sublight thing.
We can talk about all the companion quests probably. I think we can just do that right before we talk about the labyrinth.
All right. So at the end of Monarch, and I'll talk about mine, and I believe Buck's and Haley's experience as well, is you clean up all the side quests for both the Iconoclasts and MSI, and
while you're grabbing the gas, you grab Zora's employment review from because it's in the same Rizzo's lab.
Yep. You upend Graham as the leader of the Iconoclast because he's straightforwardly a piece of shit, and you put Zora in charge. And after you've cleaned up all the side quests and you put Zora in charge, you can actually do the secret third thing that Sam said was conspicuously missing from Edgewater. and broker peace between the two, and then they work together, and like the iconoclasts, the remaining iconoclasts, get housed in the MSI town, and they fulfill a lot of the roles that the MSI town people are like unable to do, and they actually like thrive just a little bit on this really harsh, terrible planet.
Yeah. And like that is an awesome, that's like, it's an awesome thing, and like that negotiation is also a great place for like persuasion and speech checks to thrive.
It feels earned. It feels like you're using your skills in really cool ways. And then there's the thing that Sam got, because Sam was not primed to look for the secret third thing.
I did full plot line for both of the factions, or at least what I thought was the full plot line for both of the factions. And I sided with Zora I bought the food and supplies for the Iconoclast colony. And then I was never prompted on a quest to like pick a new leader for the Iconoclasts.
So the thing that is supposed to happen is you are supposed to grab the weapon and go to the Iconoclast. That is where the priming happens.
So this is where I departed from.
Yes.
And
did you never do the radio tower?
I did the radio tower because that's required. You have to do the radio tower.
He grabbed the weapon and then left the planet.
So here's the thing for me. I could not be convinced. You would never in a million years convince me that either of these factions deserve to have a nuke.
Because they're killing them. They're killing each other in the streets at this point.
And they're killing their own people to an extent. Neither of these groups deserve to have an orbital defense system that is key to like protecting the colony, but also could like very easily do a large amount of harm to each other. So I was like, fuck that. I'm not giving this to either of these people. I'm just going to leave and take it with me because you don't deserve to have it.
I understand that.
So, and there was nothing that ever would have prompted me to believe that if I showed up to the Iconoclast camp that there would be an option to broker peace.
Well, you don't even have to show up to the Iconoclast first, because what
you can
Mason
go to
and I
Sanjar
did
first.
You get the targeting, because I think they refer to it as the targeting module. We went to Sanjar first, and you actually, after it takes some convincing, but eventually you do convince Sanjar to be like, okay, well, if they're able to get somebody reasonable in charge over there, like say you get Zora to take over from Graham, I would be willing to pretty much go to the table with them and talk about possibly working together, and then go to the Iconoclast and help.
And this is also maybe sadly I don't want to say a flaw with your character, but your character's strengths were not like speech, right?
They were speech.
Well, yeah.
Well, you had high charisma.
But I had no reason to go. I already did our Sanjar's side quest,
well,
so I had no reason to go back and talk to him or any of the Iconoclast people outside of delivering them this targeting device.
I do want to mention something to you then, because one thing this game does a lot is contextually change what you can talk to people about, and like unless you engage with it a lot, it doesn't make it as obvious.
But there was nothing to set me up earlier in the game to let me believe that that was a thing that was going to happen.
I understand where you're coming from on this one. Like, I get that.
I don't know. I had experienced enough contextual changes in talking to people that I thought that something would happen, because I found Zora's employment records and I hadn't used them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, what are these for?
I just wish that if that was going to be, I don't know, when you display on my mission log that my two options are give the targeting system to the Iconoclast or give the targeting system to MSI, why would I believe that there is going to be a different course of action when I get to either of those people?
Was this your biggest kind of friction point in the game?
Absolutely. Well, it's because when I got to the ending, and it talks through all of the points of the things that happen on all the planets and all the things that happens to your companions. When I got to my thing about Monarch, it's like, yeah, everyone on Monarch is dead, because you didn't give the targeting system to anybody. So the beast just took over the
That is
planet and killed everyone.
And
Then I was like, so there was literally no good solution to any of this.
Yeah, and like so like the fact that the beasts take over is like that's a little obnoxious.
That's weird because they didn't have the targeting module beforehand. And it's not like the Manta Queens are at the gates.
I figured it would have been like they would go to war with each
And
other
they
and just
killed
kill
each
each other
other.
off. Because this was actually something my brother tried to play this game a few years ago, and I only watched him do some of the Monarch stuff, and I tried to warn him about like doing the third option of brokering peace, but he's Ryan and doesn't always listen to me. So he just gave the targeting module straight to MSI and war broke out, and then he panicked and left. And I think he ended up starting the game over. He took a break from the game and just started it over a little while later.
But this was like the biggest weak point for me about this game was just like I was so disappointed by the conclusion of Monarch because I did genuinely like the direction that it was going in, and I just wish that there was something to give me the information that I had another option that wasn't just go directly talk to one of those people.
I think that context changing vocabulary is that thing.
I strongly disagree. It's not prevalent enough for me to feel like it was going to make a difference when I go and talk to these people again.
But why didn't you just do it?
Because
Why didn't you go and say no? Is my question.
Because I said no by just leaving and not presenting them the option. I didn't think either of these people could be responsible with a weapon of this size. Okay. All right.
So let me ask you this, and this is going to sound crazy, but this actually ties directly into what y'all are disagreeing about. Sam, how much did you talk to Moon Man?
I did his entire dialogue tree.
Including like putting on the head and being like,
Yeah.
hey, Moon Man, we're wearing the same hat.
Well, I don't know if I ever got the head.
Yeah. So
I never like.
I'm not trying to harp on you.
I don't know what else to say at this point.
I
found this game very hard to engage with in a lot of aspects.
I understand. I mean, I do.
I had times where it was like I like tuned out, and I really struggled to like be on the same level of where the game was trying to meet me, because I couldn't find an entry point to where it was trying to take me, you know.
Did you feel similarly with Fallout?
No, I didn't. Because at least with Fallout, I could like, with Fallout, I felt like the desperation would at least like the want to connect with the world at least played into like the concept of it being a post-apocalyptic scenario. I didn't, but like this game's not like that, where it is an apocalypse, but it's not something you're not aware of until the end, right?
Right. So I mean, yeah, I think that's interesting. I think that's a very glaring weakness of the writing of this game. I understand like the friction you felt between you and where the game was trying to be.
And it's not like I was like trying to be purposefully obtuse towards where the game was doing. I couldn't figure out. I had a hard time figuring out how the game wanted me to interact with it to be able to get the best result in any given situation, because it always felt like my actions led to bad outcomes. That's what upset me about this game more than anything else. That was part of the reason why I didn't take the targeting system to either of these people, is because my assumption, because of everything that happened up until that point, is my choices didn't necessarily make things worse, but didn't make things better. So at that point, I was so fed up with it all. I was like, okay, maybe the best thing for me to do is to not give in to either of these people.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I was also tempted to leave, but because I had those like records, I was like, God, please, something else happen.
Because realistically, in most of this game, it's not about making things better. It's just about making things slightly less bad. You never really actually improve the lives of these people to a measure that could actually be felt, and unless you like very specifically hone in on one specific ending.
Yeah, and we're about to get to that because we're
Yeah.
gonna go to Byzantium.
So now
Which
this
is
is
I think is the high point of the game.
yeah. So I'm very interested to hear about what you like about Byzantium. So moving on from Groundbreaker, the player moves to the place where the haves of the society get to live, the sort of Randian golden city on the mountain, Byzantium.
Which is interestingly also on Terra 2, where you
Yep.
have these other struggling towns, but they're just like,
I mean, that's on purpose, right?
yeah, it very much reminds me of, for any Hunger Games fans out there, like the capital compared to the districts.
Yeah. So explain, I would love if you would talk about sort of Byzantium and what you found cool about it.
I mean, the biggest thing for me was like finding the secret lab and completing that quest for Sublight. You know, and we kind of skipped over this, but I think we can talk about it here a bit. The space station, I don't remember the exact name or whatever. 1084, Space Station 1084, where you go for Sublight and like plant a flag for them. And that's like the first time you discover, that's like your first brush of what is actually happening in Halcyon, like the story that's kind of running under everything. And then you get to the secret lab and you run into a scientist.
Her name's hard to remember because you only see it like 4 times.
Yeah, I mean she only comes up the one time, so and that's you get like the whole story of everything about the food shortage, and I think what really sold me on this part of the story was that like this is actually a really interesting commentary on sci-fi as a concept. Is like, of course humans aren't going to be able to necessarily have their bodies adapt to consuming things on alien planets like that. Like, of course that's going to be a thing. There's not going to be the same nutrients necessarily being produced by things in other world. Our bodies won't necessarily be able to produce, to process those things in a way that actually like converts them into like usable components for our bodies. So I found that not only did I find that really interesting and engaging, I found that this was the first time that I felt that the tension actually made me feel very cautious about the choices I was going to make and like how I was going to approach the situation, because you actually get 3 very interesting options with that scientist, where you can either continue to let her do her work, you can kill her, like that's what Sublight wants you to do.
She's an alien.
Because she's an alien.
Because she's an alien. Or you can send her to work with Phineas on her, like continue work on her project, but send her to go work under Phineas, which is what I did, because I thought that was actually like the best option for her. It probably is the best option.
Yeah, we're gonna get into this, but the board is going to continue to fuck up and not actually do anything useful.
Yeah. So what you learn is like, this is the first time you learn that like the real stakes of everything that is going on, it's not just that the companies that run the Halcyon system are incompetent or whatever. It's that,
they're incompetent,
there's this crisis that's greater than all the parts of the things that are going on that requires more immediate attention. I think the only thing that stuck out to me as strange was that Phineas never explained any of this to you before. And I guess it was just in like I'm going to spare him to like keep his focus on the task at hand. But I just really appreciated that on Byzantium, it actually felt like the story got some real stakes and weight to it. And that's what I appreciate. Because even if you don't do that side quest, you still learn about the lifetime employment program and all that stuff going on with the chairman and all that.
And the
so.
retirees.
Yeah, I
And the
was gonna say,
retirees.
as soon as you land in Byzantium, you see a hallway full of retirees, and I was like, "What the fuck is this? What?"
Which later on you learn about the horrors of what is the early
Yeah,
retirement
they're pulling
program.
a Logan's Run scheme where they're putting people to death to reduce the number of mouths to feed. Like you learn some like very legitimately interesting and captivating things about the world, the universe, the world.
But also, Byzantium has one of my favorite comedy bits in the game with the studio,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
the production studio, and that scene is way funnier if you're stupid, because like that whole dialogue with the other actor, you just get to be like, you just get to play like you have no idea what's going on, but the other guy takes it very seriously.
That's awesome.
Conversely, if you're smart, you can ruin the whole thing by
Yeah.
fact checking everything he said.
You can be like, well, actually, that's not what those things do. I don't know why you said that. It's complete scientific nonsense. It's so fun. It's almost like hearing, Buck talk about The Last of Us. I love you, Buck.
We'll do that eventually.
That's true. That's gonna be your time to shine.
But yeah, I thought Byzantium was like a huge breath of fresh air, just because it really,
It's also like your first truly different thing. I mean, it's not technically truly different because it's like the opposite of Groundbreaker, right?
yeah.
But like you're not dealing with a whole nother like two faction. You're in a world, you go fight
Yeah.
monsters.
Yeah,
You're
that's
not-
what I was about to say.
You're not having to fight against marauders and wildlife constantly.
This is also like the first time in the game that you really get a real clear picture of who the antagonist is.
Yeah.
Because the whole time it's kind of just like, the antagonist is the board, but like you don't really get any concrete concept of what the board is.
And which the board is rich people who do not work. It's like
It's exactly what you would expect
Yeah.
it to be. But being able to put like a face to what the board represents was a nice addition to, because like even though you don't meet him in person, right, you just see the video of him like dicking around about the retirement program or whatever.
the early retirement.
Early
not,
retire-
it- not,
I thought it was
not-
called
not- no.
the
Lifetime employment plan.
Yeah.
That's
lifetime.
that's the cryogenic
Yeah,
program.
that's the cryogenic part. I thought that was a really cool. It was just a cool sequence. Like the entire like main story and like relevant side stories on Byzantium all the way through was just like, well, super super well done.
I also want to point out, strong part of the game, no big central choice. They're not very good at writing the choices.
I disagree. There is a big central choice here.
What do you? So, all right. Well,
When you go, so how you get into the lab. So whether or not, like, how you deal with the chancellor dude who you find out is on house arrest and has no power, actually. The way I did it was I managed to speed check my way into being a UPS guy that they just let in, which
yeah,
is
that's what I did too.
hilarious. And, you talk to him. I think the big story choice here is, do you kill or not kill the scientists when you take the chemicals, right?
Oh yeah. 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 You're
That is
right.
the big choice.
That is
And-
the big choice.
And so, like, here's my thing.
But this is actually a choice that is really good, even if I don't personally
I
like
so
the messaging.
so as much as, like, I already hate corporations. Everybody know I am like the biggest corpo hater in the world. And the board pissed me off so much that it got me to stop considering the human life in a video game, which is hard.
That's just impressive. That's
do.
actually just impressive.
It's very hard for me to not want to persevere, like to maintain life if you are culpably innocent. But I saw these scientists in here, and I went to go take it out, and it's like, if you take this much, it'll be you can keep the others alive. And I'm like, y'all were in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm sorry. The board is not going to succeed in doing whatever it's going to do.
For me,
They can't be trusted.
the choice has always been similarly easy, but for a slightly different reason. It's that all of the interaction you have with the Chimera project or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
is-
that's also a massive failure.
Yeah,
right?
it's always just like, yeah, whenever they freeze people, they just die.
Yeah.
Like the board can't revive people. They're dead anyway. They just are, they're like shivoing these people,
yeah, like
basically.
they
It's like, I don't feel bad. I mean, I feel bad that they were killed by the board, but I don't feel that the main character is personally responsible for killing them because the board put them in cryostasis and the board cannot revive people from cryostasis. Like,
I guess I'm the detractor here again. I let the scientists live.
yeah, which I mean,
Sure.
I think letting the scientists live is a reasonable choice as long as like you do other things to help Phineas.
Yeah.
It's just I didn't know how much I needed to do to like get a satisfactory ending, and I know it's hard to get a satisfactory ending in this game. That's like the thing I knew about this game.
My ending fucking sucks.
And,
yeah.
and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna go a half measure. Like I was so pissed off. I'm not gonna go a half measure here.
My opinion was just that like I can't be the person that condemns these people to death because they took a risk for the greater good of the colony. One of the messages I don't like about this game at all is there's this like really big tonal or this really big message that like people have to die for the greater good. And I'm just like, well, no, they don't. That's fucking stupid. You're just making that up.
Yeah.
You're creating fake stakes in this game, but like, and I it's sci-fi, so like obviously the stakes change as a result of like technology and yada yada yada. But it was like every choice, every turn you had to make, eventually, in one way or another, ends up getting people killed for the most part. Like obviously the secret third option on Monarch doesn't get anyone killed, but most of your other choices end up killing people whether you want them to or not. And that was a big gripe for me in this game. So when I got to the scientists, I was like, oh, I don't have any real concept of the game hasn't really given me any real concept of like how much of this drug I need to revitalize the people on the Hope. So maybe if I only take as much as I can, things will still work out. Maybe not the best that they can, but like good enough that like things will work out. And so I was like, this is the first time I've really been presented with a choice to not end up being directly responsible for people's deaths.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take that option. We'll see how it works out.
And like it's interesting because this game made me feel stuff that like a game never really made me felt before. But like the thing it made me feel was rage and disregard for human life.
Just contempt.
After
misanthropy.
It was after talking to the woman who gives you the early retirement program quest and going and finding out what the early retirement program was. I was like, that's it. The board's fucking dying.
Yeah.
That's why I barely thought twice with the scientists. Is I was so mad.
They had a good opportunity there to make the quest giver be like sympathetic.
Yeah.
Be like, I think something's going on. I don't know what they're doing with those people in the retirement community, but I've never heard of a new sector, and I'm just worried. But instead, they made her just like, poor. Come here, poor.
To give listeners context, if you dig into this woman's background, she's never worked a fucking day in her life. She literally was passed down money from her grandfather, and she literally says the words, I have money, therefore I'm successful, therefore I earned it.
Yeah, that's the exact quote. She's like, I earned it from my grandfather. It is like, okay. It's like they did too good a job making her insufferable. They pushed the pendulum too far the other way. So the end of the game comes very fast. It feels rushed, during which, in no particular order, you make a couple of trips to Phineas's lab, where you learn that he was previously a scientist working on the Hope. You take a trip to the Hope in order to light speed jump it to Phineas's lab so that he can do the thing that he's been wanting to do all game, revive the best and brightest minds aboard the Hope. And then finally you go to the prison labyrinth on the Storm Planet.
Tartarus.
It's definitely the Chronicles of Riddick. They do the Chronicles of Riddick at the end. You have to break out Phineas from behind a bajillion enemies. You can either go stealthily
Okay.
or fight it out.
Oh, man.
And going stealthily is way easier.
Yeah.
So, like, I got so pissed. This is the game design thing that pissed me off the so fucking muchest here.
All right.
So, we skipped over a thing where if you side with the dissenters on Edgewater, a board member asks you to, and this is the board member you need to get the board to like cooperate with Phineas, I think.
Wait, there's an ending where the board cooperates with Phineas?
I think it's something like that. I don't know. But effectively, because if you kill this woman, Rockwell says the woman is the one who was going to talk. But this woman calls you to her office, like directly to her office, and says, "You saved the Separatists on Edgewater. Go kill them."
Okay.
If you say no, she tries to kill you.
Okay.
Is this the one you have all right before you fight the big robot?
Maybe.
Yeah,
She
is
was
Sophia
dead well
Sophia.
before that. Sophia?
I think that's her name, right?
Yeah, she's the
Black woman, head cop,
Yeah. Maybe.
maybe.
So she calls you. She's in the third door in the board room.
I didn't. That one was sealed. I never got to open it.
Okay. So she calls you over. She says, "Go kill everyone on Edgewater." If you say no, she tries to kill you. So you have to kill her, and you have to kill like everyone in the embassy to get out.
And then all of Byzantium is hostile to you?
Yeah, that would be what's the case. And then so I did this, and this happened. And so when you go to Tartarus this way, you can land there and you can talk the dude into giving your biological information so that you can sneak through. However, I was super friendly with everyone, which meant when we started raiding Tartarus,
They roll up.
they rolled up to come help.
Yep. This happened to me too,
So-
and it makes no sense. If
So-
you complete all of the side quests for a faction, they will assault Tartarus with you.
Oh, I did. I got that.
Yeah, so we had
like
Junlei and her crew from the Groundbreaker.
I had that.
We had MSI soldiers.
Didn't
We had
have that.
Iconoclast.
I didn't have that.
Yeah,
obviously.
the MSI and Iconoclast do come help you if you get them.
I got the groundbreaker people to show up and
Yeah,
help at
and-
least.
and so
Not
like,
that I needed it.
I
like-
was trying to still preserve some human life sneaking through, but because my buds rolled up, I'm like, no, you can't kill my buds.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Gotta save your buds. You already did all the side quests for them.
so I had to kill some innocent, which like
They're cops.
yeah, but
I was able to just walk through the firefight.
yeah.
No one shot at me or
That's-
touched
Well,
me.
I
That's
didn't
what I
wanna
did
walk
too.
through- I didn't want to walk through the firefight. I wanted to save my friends.
That is a strange thing mechanically that allows you to do is just walk through the firefight
lets
with the
you-
shroud on.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's with the fight? Like, why wouldn't you have a dialogue thing at the beginning where all the
You can,
people
like,
call you
ask them.
and you're like, whoa, stand down. I'm going
Yeah.
to try and sneak in.
Hey, look, this is a thing that we'll like more about Mass Effect 2
Yeah.
when we talk about that game.
So you confront a big bad robot. It's big and scary and is level 35 and has lots of big numbers.
Took
You
me
have
2
a
tries.
you have a cool firefight, and you are able to save Phineas from the clutches of the evil cop woman, who tries to kill you but is like puny and level 1.
For me, Rockwell was there.
For me, Rockwell was lower, and he was like on floor 2, and you pass by him and you're like, I am going to literally blow your head off if you don't become my corporate puppet. And he's like, Heard, boss. He wisens up very quick.
Which you can choose to kill him, because Mason did that his first playthrough.
I opened the door and I was like, why would I let this guy live?
Playthrough, it was, you're going to be the puppet.
Yeah, see, I fought the robot, and then Rockwell tried to kill me.
Oh.
So.
I guess it was, I wonder if it was because I was like, I don't know what I did that allowed me to still talk to Rockwell specifically, but I chose to make him a puppet because I thought it would be an easier way to like get around. I don't know. It's hard to like justify my options at the end because it was like it was like during that last stretch, it was really hard to gauge how impactful these decisions were.
Yeah.
Because it all happened so quickly.
Yeah. It happened so fast. I did this whole ending sequence in like an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I talked to Rockwell, I was like, I guess I'll let him live because I don't know, maybe it'll be helpful somehow later.
It gives you a
he's very
slightly better
powerful.
ending if you make him your puppet. Or it did for me at least. So
Yeah, because he becomes like anything that like you and Phineas do to like help the colony and all that. He basically acts as the mouthpiece for
Yeah.
the rest
He's
of the
like he's a
colony.
very powerful propagandist. Like he's very good at doing propaganda. So I guess my logic was like, well, maybe he can do propaganda for me, but the things I'm doing are not actively destroying the colony, you know?
and yeah, that's what he does. So the ending of this game is the kind that's on the last episode of a sitcom.
Let's
where it's
before
like
we
Ashley,
get to that.
Ashley went on to major in medicine.
Before we get to that, we need to talk about the companions and the companion side quests because
Yeah.
those are part of the ending.
Sure. So the game has 6 companions. 5 of them have some amount of substance. One of them is a robot who says funny things because this is like Knights of the Old Republic.
Has sex with your spaceship.
Yep.
Yep.
You walk in on it role playing with the spaceship AI, which is
With a feather duster.
just a nightmare. Just a literal. Why do they put this in the game? Why does my ship AI moan? I don't like it. I hate it. So, first you meet who I think is the best, Parvati. Parvati is an engineer on Edgewater. She tags along to sort of be your guide and then asks desperately to leave the dying planet of Edgewater. Vicar Max, this religious figure who is actually an ex-convict that turned into a vicar.
I think he's my favorite.
He's very good. You also have Felix, a cardboard cutout of a revolutionary teenager who was added probably late in development and doesn't have a lot going for him. Ellie, a surgeon who earned her doctorate in Byzantium, where her rich parents lived, who later left to go live a blue-collar life. Yeah, and be a criminal.
Be a pirate.
Be a pirate. And then finally, Nyoka, a mercenary with a drinking problem that you learn is caused by immense grief. Yeah, in Monarch. The companions are really cool, I think, with the exception of Felix, who I think got done a horrible injustice.
I never even saw Felix's companion quest. It never even got triggered for me. The only time he spoke to me was after I killed Graham, and he was like, hey, I feel sad because I liked Graham, but he kind of fucking sucked.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm sorry.
I was expecting there to be more between Felix and Graham, but
Yeah.
Felix's companion quest is he gets contacted by an old friend of his from the Groundbreaker who's like trying to start like a rebel colony essentially, and you eventually find out that guy is on the take from the board because of course he is. So it's kind of a retread of some other parts of the story. But I don't know. I really liked Felix. Even if he wasn't fully fleshed out, I at least appreciated that he was a representation of someone who is not like fully in the know of what's going on. He's more just like kind of a drifter.
yeah.
As a result of his upbringing, because he was just like a nobody on the Groundbreaker, and he was a laborer on the Groundbreaker.
The problem I have
He was the closest thing you could have to like a refugee.
The problem I have with Felix is that they talk about him in the ending, and it's like not the character Felix. They're like, The ending I got for Felix was like the revolution that Felix yearned for never came, and he learned that real work was done with 2 hands. And it's like, is this the same Felix? Felix does not want revolutionary. He's just anti the big thing.
Well, Felix is an idea. I mean, he has ideas, but he's not smart enough to like understand what the ideas mean. He
wasn't.
He has ideals, but he's not smart enough to understand how to like act on them or do anything about them.
It felt like to me a old person trying to write a young leftist or hippie. One of those where they're like, oh yeah, they're like
naive.
stupid and vapid and naive and like but like they just didn't give him enough time. They didn't give enough to him, which sucks because he seems like a cool character. That's a cool concept for a character. Someone like yearning for a revolution that is impossible under the circumstances. But that's not what he was. He was a young person who was looking to adventure and find more of life. That's what he felt like to me. That's what I read him as. Someone who was like trying to make the most of their life and like get out and experience the world. But then like the story is like, oh no, he's like he's this idealistic revolutionary. It's like,
I think if you just do someone's companion quest, it like very slightly adjusts what the ending is.
Ellie, I think, is
better. I thought she was the weakest.
Better than Felix, but I also think pretty weak. She felt like kind of tacked on, which is weird because she's on the cover art of the game, like standing with you in Edgewater as you emerge from your pod, and
like her companion quest is 3 steps. Go talk to her parents, find out where the insurance is, go commit insurance fraud.
I wonder
it's
if
2
they
steps
scaled back.
if you already know where the insurance thing is.
Part of me wonders if they like scaled back all of the companion quests in this game because they realized that they weren't as prevalent to the main story and they were worried about like detracting from the main meat of the game.
I have heard they were actively trying to keep this game short.
Yeah.
And like
I feel because I can like feel the parts of the companion quests that were truncated. Especially, I think Vicar Max is the one where I felt it the most. I felt his plot thread needed to be about 1.5 to 2 times as long as it was for it to make sense where it concluded.
So I have a theory about the companion quest that I talked with Mason about yesterday. Is I have a feeling that maybe not like early on in the game, but like it was planned throughout development for Parvati, Vicar Max, and Nyoka's companion quests, because those, for the most part, were much more fleshed out. There was a lot more to them, and all of their quests, like, what they accomplished was endearing you to their characters. Whereas with Ellie and Felix, I almost wonder if they weren't even going to be companions at first, but late in development, the head people were like, hey, actually, we need to add more companion options, so create something. Because Ellie and Felix both, like you said, their companion quests, there's so much less to them. They're only like 2 or 3 steps, and they don't really do anything that adds to their character. It's like, okay, well, I helped you with this one thing. Time to move on.
It's all very slapdash to you.
Yeah.
And like Nyoka's, as a like comparison, Nyoka's ceremony of putting her dead companions to rest like feels so cathartic in comparison, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and like the dialogue you get to have around that is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm a detractor on Nyoka's.
Don't like Nyoka's.
It's not that I didn't like it. I didn't get hit that hard by it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean, I didn't get hit super hard. I just thought it was compelling.
The only point of Nyoka's companion quest where I really like felt the weight of it was when you get into that house where the one person died and the other one killed him or herself. I don't remember. And you read the note that they left where like, we thought we were getting out of Monarch to build a better life for ourselves, but out here, all the corporate, everything's just so corporate. It's like impossible to build anything without there being red tape. I can't even like use the bathroom or something without filling out a form. That to me was the peak of that companion quest, and I felt that it did itself a disservice by having that being one of the first things you find, and then the rest of it being like just not hitting that same level of emotional impact.
Yeah.
Not like I thought that one moment was incredibly impactful. I loved it. I just wish they had managed to get that all the way through.
So the reason that doesn't hit me as hard as the end of it was because you discover a lot of bodies that have committed suicide in this game.
Sure.
It is like weirdly all over the place.
It's just another thing about there can't be progress without human death thing.
Yeah. It's just like you roll into a random dungeon and then there's like a locked door with a guy who shot himself inside. Or you go into a science lab and there's a scientist who shot herself in the head inside. And, it's just like after I found like 50 of these, the emotional way to finding the 51st is like there's nothing. I can't like I don't have sympathy left for another body that shot itself because of how bad the Marauders are. They played it too much.
I don't think it was the fact that person was driven to suicide for me. It was more like the note that was left.
Yeah, the note was good.
The explanation of everything, because so much, I mean, as we said earlier, a lot of the logs in this game kind of bleed together a little bit in their tone and everything. That one for me was one where I felt the true like depravity and desperation of the people who live here because of the way it was written out.
All right. So we're going to do a quick slight sidebar before we do one moments, because it's a comedy game. Favorite bit?
Sam and Parvati's bond, where Parvati becomes his like personal mechanic. And he just like talks about all the servicing he needs whenever you take the two of them out together.
Very good.
I liked that. I appreciated that.
Haley?
My favorite bit in Fallbrook, you have the side quest with what was his name? Nelson
the drug dealer.
Yeah, where he has like sprats, which are these little like kind of rat dog type things in the game, and he is essentially using them to curry drugs instead of the auto mechanicals he was using. And he, like, throughout your conversations with him, he'll say, such and such, and at the end he'll say wink, but not actually wink. He just like stares at you and is just like wink. And during your last conversation with him, when you're talking about because I think he's accusing you of like some of the drugs being missing or whatnot that you recovered, you can just punch him in each of his eyes. And with anybody else in the game, that would cause like a huge like conflict and attack. But when you do it to him, he's just like, ow, what'd you do that for? Anyway, and that just keeps carrying on. His character was just so funny. It's a shame you only interact with him for a little bit.
The best part of that interaction is when you punch him once and then you're like, wink again, I dare you. And he goes, I wouldn't dream of it. Wink. And then you punch him again.
That reminds me of a bit from Regular Show.
My favorite bit was the Moon Man. Martin the Moon Man on the Groundbreaker is so fucking funny. And they knew how funny it was, and they added all these lines where you bring all your NPCs to him. And he's like, try Somali Ali toxin free. And Ellie's like, that's an anti-Cleos product. And he's like, oh God, no. No, I can't. And she's like, I'm kidding, man. You put on a moon hat like him, and you're like, hey, Martin, we're wearing the same hat. And he's like, if only you knew the depths of sadness that my moon hat held. It's so fucking funny. And you can like go onto a one of the publicly available computers on the Groundbreaker, find that he accidentally stayed logged in, and then there's just like emails from his mother that are like, you're getting real sad, son. Are you cool? Like, is everything okay?
So I don't know how much I actually found hyper funny, but I will mention something I already mentioned.
Yeah.
And that is holding Sanjar's employment review over his head.
Incredible.
I think that's a pretty good bit.
All right. 1 moments. Sam?
I think for me, the best moment of this game was it's like hard because I really liked this moment as a bit of character work. I didn't necessarily like it all the way through, but the end of Vicar Max's story, his like companion quest, where he has to come to terms with that the Church of the Law is like really stupid. I think what it is for me is that, you know, philosophy is essentially banned in Halcyon. You know, you're not allowed to like indulge in like other types of philosophy. You are basically supposed to follow the order of the law, which
By
is
fate, you are destined to be employed by a company.
Yeah,
and
which is basically just like company or the board, you know,
Approved
propaganda.
religion.
Yeah. So I thought it was just really I think there's a lot of people that they just subscribe to their one religion for their entire lives in real life, and they don't even begin to explore like the other options just to like even just for an understanding. So like having this storyline where Vicar Max has to like come to terms that the religious text that he's been following for his entire life doesn't make any real sense. I'm not the biggest fan of its like kind of like edgy atheist take on life, because that's how it ends up coming off to me. But I at least do appreciate that Vicar Max gets a chance to have a deeper philosophical understanding of life, and as a result, like begin to understand what it is to live a better life. That's not just forcing people to understand that they're trying to work for the company, because as a result of him being an ex-felon, he wants a deeper understanding of like why the things he does are important. Even if the conclusion is not the best, I at least respect them for trying to go in a direction of just trying to go in the direction that they did for his storyline.
Cool.
I just want to mention real quick. Anybody who plays this game, have Max debate program. It's very enjoyable.
Oh.
Vicar Max is the debate bro, and he's honestly a lot of the times I found him to be like the most like sane character in this game.
Yeah.
A lot of good points from him a lot of the time.
Well, he's very board
Pragmatic.
worshipy before you get him to. But
Haley?
So my one moment is actually the same as Sam's, but for different reasons. So it should be mentioned that at the end of Vicar Max's companion quest, how he gets to this conclusion of, you know, he's been trying to find the answers to these questions he's been asking in terms of like religion and what the plan is and all that, is they go to this hermit lady. And basically they go on a vision quest with hallucinogens, which is very funny. You end up talking to like Vicar Max's like mother, and then, you know, a version of himself. Why this is my one moment is because there's a lot of talk, specifically the part when he is talking to his mother about control, about how Vicar Max has been striving his whole life for absolute control, you know, just stick to the plan and you're going to, you know, have this happiness in your life and all that stuff. And his mother's like, you know, you like that control is an illusion, like life is chaos type thing. And it made me think about, and I know this sounds weird, but a lot of conversations I have with my clients, because like I'm a therapist, so I deal with a lot of concerns around anxiety and a lot of anxiety can be traced back to, control, wanting to control everything. Because if if you're in control, you know what's going to happen, because the unknown, the chaos is scary. So it just made me think a lot about, people who try to have this control and have this illusion of like, okay, well, if, I have control over everything, or, everything has its certain place, nothing scary or bad can happen, which, as we know, just isn't true. So I don't tell my clients to like embrace all the chaos or anything like that, but to at least kind of be like, in our sessions, it's more so like, okay, what is within your control that you can have a hand on, and what is outside of your control? That's what we kind of need to work on, letting go of and all that. So I just thought that was a really cool aspect as part of, Vicar Max's vision quest.
Hell yeah. Buck?
It's hard for me to have a moment with this game because emotionally, like, I struggle with some of the same things Sam does with like emotionally engaging with a lot of the game.
The game keeps you at an arm's length.
But it really does.
But I'm gonna mention a side quest that I found really interesting. So there's a guy in the Iconoclast area called Ash. If you talk to him, he acts like he has this like brooding backstory, and you can buy him a beer, and he like tells you about like this mercenary group he used to be a part of, and he doesn't know what happened to them or whatever. But that's all a fucking lie. What actually happened was he was supposed to get them off of the planet, and he ended up doing something else at the same time that they were supposed to be getting picked up. And what you're going and grabbing for him was his payment. And, like, that's clearly a shitty thing, and you can tell Ash to go fuck himself. But, like, I thought that was, like, an interesting interaction of people and selfishness that, like, it's not really a point of the game or anything, but like it was an actual like unique experience that didn't feel repetitive and I just, that was a unique thing that stood out to me in a whole bunch of shit that never felt unique in a lot of places that I played.
Absolutely. I think my moment is, I think this game accomplishes the tone that it is trying to create 2 times, as I mentioned earlier. A lot of times the game will set up very serious stakes or set up a type of feeling that it's like, okay, the game is about to get serious for a little while. I'm thinking of on Roseway, where you arrive to a colony town that is like ravaged and everyone's dead. But then you learn it's because they're making toothpaste. They like kind of ruin a lot of these things. Instead of putting a clever twist, they kind of ruin the tone. 2 times where I think they stick the landing as far as having it actually be serious at the end are the scientists, the chimerists, who get frozen and then like left behind for the dwindling team of scientists to try and revive them. And then the other one, which is my moment, which is at the end of Nyoka's companion quest, where, Nyoka's quest feels very human, and I agree with what Haley was saying earlier. It endears you to Nyoka. There's a sense of familiarity with the way that she talks about these characters, and it's helped along by the voice actors doing an incredible job during this section, where Nyoka is like part of a 6-person crew of like not mercenaries, not headhunters or guides, but just survivalists, just people that broke away from the company and are literally trying to get food for tomorrow. And you go and you find this memorabilia on all of their individual corpses where they have failed at surviving, and give them a burial in the cave that they all hung out in when they were younger. You learn that like why Nyoka drinks herself into a stupor is because she holds a lot of grief for all these people. And she writes them like a personalized headstone at the end. The one that particularly kind of tugged on my heartstrings was for a character, and the headstone read, the closest thing to a sister that I ever lost. Which is, it's a simple turn of phrase, but it's like the most humanizing moment that really any of the companions get throughout the course of the game. With the exception of Parvati and Vicar Max, but they're hitting very different tonal notes during their side quests. Now, there is a lot we have left out because this is a very complex and immense game. I do think that overall, I did have a positive experience. I would put the game at about a 7 out of 10. It's just that, like, Obsidian made Pentiment, and Obsidian made KOTOR 2, and it's like...
New Vegas.
It's like, this is a 7,
We have not completely touched on the ending.
Yeah, well...
Yeah.
Does everyone want to talk about their endings, what their endings were?
So
I feel like y'all probably got pretty similar endings. Mine's probably the most different.
I think the good ending for absolutely everything.
I don't think there is a good ending, period. Like, realistically.
I mean, I don't know about that.
The ideal ending.
Like what would you define as a good ending? Because like in my ending, we restored everyone on the Hope, and
they go on to fix things.
They fix things. Like
it takes a long time to do so.
Yeah.
But
I find it hard to define what a good ending is in this game because this game doesn't set you up to believe that good things can happen.
Sure.
So
yeah.
like my belief towards a good ending in this game would be just like life goes on and doesn't end, which like I'm not sure if that's even. I guess like if you side with the board and everyone's put in the lifetime workers program, then that is the ending. But I think if you like just resist the board at all, then like life continues. Because like in my ending, when I only took the small amount of the drug to revive people on the Hope, not everyone, like a very small group of the Hope got revived. They said it was only like maybe a dozen or something, and only like half of those people made it. But like, life still goes on in the colony. Like it's like decades later, decades pass and they're very difficult, but things continue and you become like the ruler of Halcyon with the guy as your puppet. And you get to dodge the red tape. So like that to me is a very like pretty open, ambiguous ending because like the things that are going to happen in Halcyon are directly influenced by whatever your character does after the tape stops rolling.
So that's interesting to me because like in my ending, it explicitly said, okay, we saved everyone on the Hope. Okay. Like the board is gone.
Yeah. The board was gone.
And we like, it did say we struggled a little bit, but it was like everything is fixed.
Yeah.
It took, I think, about like a generation for things to get where, and not everybody got revived on the Hope at first. Like you had enough to revive like the brightest minds, like Phineas was saying, like the engineers and scientists and intellectuals. And I think over the course of a decade, you were able to revive nearly all of the colonists on the Hope.
Yeah, I would say that's like maybe like 30% better than what I got. Because like you have to weigh that like reviving everyone on the Hope costs the life of all the scientists that you kill.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like it's not like an objective upgrade.
Yeah. The worst thing about the ending that we all got was that like Phineas feels guilty about the people that died for the rest of his life. But in my view, it's like I've killed a 4-digit number of people.
Yeah.
I can at least appreciate that Phineas at least feels guilty about the people
Yeah.
he's killed, which is not
like,
a trait that's held by a lot of people in this game.
True.
I want to talk about how much of a failure of this game does with the choices again a little bit.
Yeah.
Because like they try to hold the fact that Phineas failed to revive some Hope colonists before he revived you, like over your head as like a, hey, maybe you shouldn't pick Phineas. But like that's just not even how it ends if you side with Phineas.
I mean, I genuinely, I told Mason, like, as I was playing, I genuinely expect Phineas to, like, flat out betray me at some point, because that's kind of how I felt like the whole game had been leading me to believe. And so, like, the big reveal being that he gooped a couple of scientists on it, or gooped a couple people on the Hope on his way to, like, have his first success and he felt remorse for it. I was like, oh, okay, that's, like, pretty mild compared to what most of the people do here, so it was like pretty easy for me to like continue working with him, because it was like, if that's like the worst thing he's done, he's not 1% of what most of the board
is doing.
Yeah.
So
he's just like so far and away like the good option.
Genuinely the only thing that made me mad about my ending was the Monarch stuff.
Yeah, sadly, if you broke her piece, Monarch is like, Monarch's fucking thriving.
Yeah.
They're doing great.
Yeah.
I didn't understand why the beasts took over like that. It was just like,
Yeah, that does seem like lazy writing.
Yeah.
I think the worst with ours was like with Edgewater, because that's when you learn like, with diverting the power to the botanical labs and the deserters, like the people of Edgewater are forced to kind of try to make their way to that encampment, and Adelaide takes very few in, and
most of them just
most of
marauders.
the rest of them are forced into the wilderness, and they say it's likely that most of them just ended up starving out in the wilderness or being killed by marauders.
So like
wildlife.
realistically, the good ending for Edgewater is actually to cut off, or like to broker peace,
to broker peace and get them
and
to
then
join.
the people who actually get the food or like get in the experiment that fixes the human anatomy to be able to digest.
Yep.
So, which is stupid.
Yeah, there's no reason to know when there's no reason when you're in Edgewater to realistically pick that. You'd have to know the ending already to like know that that's what's going to happen.
Which I don't know. I'm gonna say something about Tim Kaine.
Yeah.
I watch a lot of his videos. I have a lot of respect for him as like a game designer, but he talks a lot about how like if you don't like something, you should just not talk about it. And that's such a weird way for a creator to like look at criticism, in my opinion. And like, I think he should learn that maybe don't design shit where the only way to know like how to get the best choice is hindsight. And I think that's my biggest problem with this game.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been the biggest detractor of this game so far today, so I want my last thing to be something positive. I think the biggest compliment I can give this game is that it is a very easy play, and I don't mean that in the sense of the game itself is easy to play. I mean that in a sense of like, if you're just looking for something that is a nice romp that you can kind of just like sit and play, and you're not going to feel like super heavy when you turn the game off at the end of the night, this is like a pretty good choice for that.
Absolutely.
When I played this game, I wasn't necessarily engaged the entire time all the way through, but I was able to like pretty easily just like pick it up and put it down, pick it up and put it down, and never feel like I need to like sit and like devote a bunch of time because I have to like process everything that's happening.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to share this at the beginning of the episode, but this was actually the game that led me to realize that video game narratives were a thing, and I really enjoyed watching Mason play certain video games for the story, because he started playing this, I think it was very shortly after we moved in together.
Yeah.
Like before this, I had no interest in like storied video games, because
did we move in together in 2019?
Yes.
It would have been right when this game came out. It had to be right around that time.
Because my previous history, like I played like some video games and all that, but not like a lot of the ones that have been played on the podcast. But my experience with like storied video games was just trying to watch my brother play games, but he would almost never be doing story stuff when I try to watch him. He would just be dinking around, and I would be like, is this all there is to this game? Like, how is this fun? And then Mason started playing this game, and I didn't catch like his very beginning stuff. I think I was like doing stuff around the apartment and all that, and I caught part of the story. I think it was actually the decision with Parvati, when you're talking about diverting the power, you know, to Edgewater or the botanical labs. And I started doing like kind of like the dad thing where you're like hovering, like watching the TV show, hovering the game. I was like, what game are you playing? He explained it to me. And eventually I did the other dad thing where I slowly gravitate and sit on the couch to watch it. And from there on, I was like, I actually want to watch you play this game. Like, I want to see how this story plays out. So I think, like, you know, for that, this game kind of has a special place in my heart a little bit.
You know, it's interesting because, like, a lot of people say this game is just mediocre, and I think that's selling this game short to a lot of the bullshit that gets put out by AAA game companies.
Sure.
Yeah.
This
game is only mediocre in the sense that the developers and writers who worked on it are held to a higher standard than a lot of studios.
Yeah.
Like, if this came out of Ubisoft, this would be like
the best game
earth-shattering.
Ubisoft ever
This would
made.
be wild. It's only that it has Obsidian, it has people who worked on Fallout attached to the project, that it falls short of expectations. If this were any other company that like touched this, and if it didn't have like Tim Kaine, I mean, obviously the criticisms would still be valid, but it would be like, oh yeah, this is like a really good game. It's just that they made New Vegas and Pentiment and, you know, what's it called? Not Ashes of Creation, Pillars of Eternity, and
all these other very critically and consumerarily well-received games.
Yeah.
I think I made up a word there, but
I do think this is a good game. I do think it's worth a play, and I am very, very optimistic about the sequel.
I think this is a perfect. And Haley alluded to this. I think this is, if you are not a person who plays a lot of narrative games, this is a very good like entry point to like start
Yeah. I agree with that.
your journey,
Yep. There are also now 2 DLC to the game.
which we didn't talk about at all.
Yeah,
No.
well, they're not important to the main story, but I'm excited to see how they play out. I started the first one.
Yeah. I started Terror on Gorgon, and that is infinitely more compelling than almost any other thing I've done in this game. And I'm not going to get to finish it because I have to record a podcast.
Yeah, we have to talk about. We have to go to our next game.
Yeah.
We have to go to our next game, The Outer Worlds.
No, the other one.
Sorry, the Outer Worlds.
No, the other.
All right,
one.
hold on. Sorry. The Wild Outside?
Close enough.
The Outer Worlds.
Outer. So the next game we're doing is Outer Wilds.
Yeah, the Outer Worlds. You're getting them confused.
I cannot believe that there were people that like both of these companies made these games and they released them around the same time.
All right, Sam, you and I are in a pitch meeting, okay? Okay, I got an idea for a game, boss.
Okay.
Sci-fi, right?
Yep.
Traveling around in a spaceship.
Yep.
Learning things about yourself, making choices about the world.
Yep.
Gonna call it the Outer something or other, some
Okay,
bullshit.
that sounds good.
Yeah, all right. Fund it.
It's also the next episode is the Outer Wilds. Next episode will also be the last episode of the season. We are going to start doing seasons of about 25 episodes each. So we will be taking a couple of weeks off to kind of just catch up on games. So we will be releasing mini episodes in the interim. So look forward to those. They'll probably be a little shorter, probably around 15 to 30 minutes each. So don't worry, we're still going to be putting out content in the meantime. But next episode will be our last full episode for about a month and a half to 2 months.